Um, maybe as housekeeping, it would have been nice that all librarians, when they joined, especially those who would like to secure as CPD points their um, for their librarian status, to join with their full names so that it would be easy to pick up, so that they can gain those CPD points. Um, we hope to be joined by two speakers today. One, it will be Hercules Combrink from the from University of the Free State. He is an accomplished scholar, recognized scientist. He is part of the BRICS Young Scientist Forum. His research is mainly on the medical biology. He's engaged in research projects that relates to machine learning, deep learning, data science, reinforcement learning and theories and through deep reinforcement learning, algorithms to improve the quality of agriculture, education, and healthcare. And all of this form part of the data science and social impact movement by encouraging engagement to local challenges as catalyst for innovation solution across all fields. So as we can see, Mr. Combrink, what we tried to do this year, because the reality is that AI is with us now, and so we thought, let's get a speaker who would show this relationship between open science, in this case, open data, and how it's integrated into research. And later at around half past 10, we'll be joined by Professor Bauer. Professor Ahmed Bauer it's an academic at the Faculty of Johannesburg Business School, which is part of the University of Johannesburg, since 2022. Before that, he was the CEO of University South Africa, and before that, he was the a vice chancellor and principal of Durban University of Technology. He also serves as a program officer for higher education in Africa with Ford Foundation between 2002 and 2005. His areas of interest are high energy, physics, higher education studies, science, and society. He is a fellow of the Royal Society of South Africa as well as the Academy of South Africa. So those are about two speakers today who will be taking us through their involvement in open science. I haven't seen Hercules joining yet. Maybe what I could do is just to sketch where we come from. I wanted to share with you this only around between after Hercules, so that you can see where we are now with what Hercules is going to present and where we are coming from. So, but seeing that we're still waiting. So what you'll do, Apelele, you'll let me know as soon as he comes in. And then we can then come to. So let me share this with you where we come from. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Thank you. So this was my presentation. Let me stop sharing here. Let me move to the other one. Sorry. Right. Um, this was a presentation I made in 2015. I had joined the University of the Free State in April, so it was just around 6 months after joining. So just to give you an idea where we were, some eight years ago, and this is a discussion we are having around open access. So this was my first open access week celebration at the University of the Free State. So I want you to look at the topics that we're looking at the time. What were we talking about? And then we'll look today what we are talking about. So the first thing that we were talking about at the time was to tell people where we're coming from about the Berlin Declaration. This is also for those of us who are new into into open science and open access. This is also probably something that you can look up to. So we 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 were talking about Berlin Declaration, and at the time at our university, it was signed by the then vice chancellor in 2011 already. So the question that we are asking, because now we're trying to convince academic to have a buy-in, and not only academic but management also to buy in into open access. So we're answering the question, for instance, what does it do? What does open access do? What are problems that is intended to address? And broadly, what is open access? So we are beginning to define. That was 8 years ago. Our mandate at that time, we were trying to convince people to say this is what is open access. This is what open access can do. So in defining open access, we tell you that, for instance, the good thing about it is that it's immediate. Is that it's immediate, and it's based on it's research articles, and those are available online. But one of the important element of open access is the reuse, because you would see that it was beginning to shift from copyright to copyleft. It was one of the movements that was pushing for copyleft. Copyleft is to say, instead of having information that is closed, and then you cannot use it unless you get a permission from somebody. So you would see that with Creative Commons licenses, you can actually use the information that you get. You can adapt it, you can use it, but the license itself, it tells you this is what you can use it for. This is how you can use it. Sometimes there are limitations, for instance, that you cannot, some of them limitations that you may not use it for commercial purposes. Some of them limitation may say you cannot adapt it, you must use it as it is. So those are all the principles that came with open access. So at that time, we use a case study of Homo naledi. I'm not sure how many of you remember Homo naledi, but when they were doing that research, or when there was that discovery, they made both the articles open access, but the whole excavation or expedition, it was done live. You know, when they were finding those bones, when they're putting them together, they were doing it live. So what that means, it's that people, students and academic in other universities overseas were able to have the same information that vets researchers at the time and the students were having. So the scan, one of the example, on that day when it was discovered, the following day in universities overseas, they were able to do a 3D scan on Homo naledi and then have a class around it. So, and something, if it was behind paywall, what could have happened is that they would wait for months and months. And what would top it on? If they don't subscribe to that channel, they wouldn't have access to that information. But because of open science and open access, it was available immediately. This was the example. The example there was of Duke University, where the following day they were able to use Homo naledi in a classroom situation or in a lecture hall situation. So all of these things, you can see it was happening live. As you can see on your right-hand side, that video, that was live. People were able to see it, and then the sketches themselves, they were there able. So this is the a caption from Duke University academic, where it says he was able to download the model and then print it using MacBot. MacBot is a 3D scanner. It took him 20 minutes tops. And then he was able to give his graduate students who are teaching an undergraduate lab in biological anthropology in 12 hours. It was not even the following day. In 12 hours, they had the Homo naledi in their own classroom, as if they were in South Africa, as if they were at Maruping, where they were discovered. So that shows you what the benefits of open science were at the time, right? So what this shows that within a week, within a day, everybody who was interested had. And in one day, there were almost 1,700 copies of data that was downloaded. So that's where the issue of data comes into play. Please just look at on. So and two, all of that information was displayed on social networks, and it was used in class. And obviously, what we are saying as activists of open access, we are saying that the authors, because currently with a subscription publishing, most of the authors they almost give away their copyright to the publisher, so they don't retain the copyright. So what open science was pushing for is pushing that the authors should be able to retain their copyrights, and they should be able to deposit their articles in institutional repositories that they prefer. At the time, we're promoting the concept of self-archiving. This is what I was talking about in terms of licenses, to say when you publish, you can also make it open licensing, which is copy. The activists were calling copyleft as an opposition of copyright, but it's actually Creative Commons license, and there are different kinds. This is the most open one, and this one is just saying you can use it as it is, but when you share, it should look the same. So you can remix, you can tweak it, you can build your own, you can do whatever. It's free to all open license, and this one is you can commercial and non-commercial as long as passed along. So you take it as it is, but you can use it for commercial or not, and you obviously you need to credit. And then this one, NC, meaning non-commercial. You can't use it for commercial purposes. You can only use for academic and other and personal purposes. And then this one, it's you can tweak it, you can remix it, you can do whatever you want, but not for commercial purposes. This one, it's the one of those what you call most restrictive, whereby you are only allowed to download your work and share as long as you credit, but you can't change anything and you cannot use it for commercial purposes. So these are all attributes related. So those are the things that we were talking to authors about in 2015. So at the time then we're telling them that every year in the last week of October, annually, we as a unit, we celebrate this Open Access Week. And these are the activities that we are doing in promoting open access. And then, yeah, that was our mascot, to promote open access. And obviously, Oprah was still famous in 2015. So we had to use her. Thank you, colleagues. That's the end of my slides in terms of where we come from. Just a moment. Okay, we can open the. Can you confirm, Apelele, if we have Mr. Hercules on the line?
No, we don't have him yet, unless if he joined with a different username.
Okay. I'll try and get one of my colleagues to see if we can. Okay, colleagues, I'll open the floor for any questions and any reflections that you have on open science while we wait for our speaker. Let me stop sharing. Thank you. On the chat, let's see what we have there. Just a greeting. Ooh. Yes, good morning once more, colleagues. I must sincerely apologize. It looks like Mr. Comrick, unfortunately, is held back, so is unable to join us. Um, so my suggestion, what I should do, colleagues, I think we can adjourn until let's rejoin again at 10:15, around from 10:15, and then we will be joined by Prof. Bauer at 10:30. So adjourn now, and then we would be joined by Prof. Bauer at 10:15, 10:15 for 10:30. I must sincerely apologize. Let's see you again at 10:15. Thank you. I think so Combrink has joined us. Am I correct?
I believe so. Just doing a double check. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Nicholas.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. I already apologize. We I've already introduced you to the colleagues, and they were looking forward to hearing from you. I'll hand over to you, Hercules.
Thank you very much, and I really do appreciate this. And thank you so much, colleagues, for this opportunity. Before we do a deep dive and a jump into this, I just wanted to know if the thumbs up or any responses or reactions are active. So I'm just going to ask a few questions to the group, and I would like you to just answer at a very high level, very broad perspective by just giving some reaction to the questions that I asked. So the first question is, how many of you are actively engaged in generative AI? So this is things like ChatGPT, image to text, speech to text, anything like that that you use on a regular basis. How many of you use generative AI? I can see there's some reactions, maybe not a lot.
So guys, what you need to do, you go to that where there's reactions, then you click either thumbs up or raise your hand. Any one of those. On your next to share screen or next between share screen and apps, there's where that says reactions. Click there, then show a thumbs up.
Okay, I'm just going to see, I see that there are more people reacting. This is good. I just want everyone to be interactive. This is an important thing that I've learned through online presentations, is that we need engagement, especially when it comes to this. Okay, my second question for the entire group has to do with, if you've used generative AI, how many of you have used generative AI to complement your job? I see some hands. This is really good. May I ask, just if you are comfortable, would you mind just writing in the chat just where in your work do you use it? Then the third question I would like to ask for the group is, if any of you are pursuing graduate studies or studying further, have any of you used generative AI for your studies to complement your studies in any way, shape, or form? I'm just giving everyone an opportunity. If you have used it in your studies, please indicate how. Okay, so some reactions do indicate text to speech, to summarize, and to identify trends. Now, the trend identification is a very strong one, but the text to speech as well as summarization is something that I would like to touch on in that. Okay, the purpose of today's discussion is to outline where generative AI started, where it moved through, and where we collectively should focus our energy and efforts into. What I've noticed with a lot of the generative AI presentations that people have is that most of these presentations is based on an individual explaining, or an expert explaining something about the field, but then the participants just have to take the information from the speaker and then use it as is and refer from there. The problem with generative AI is that we're in an entirely new space in not only higher education, but in an entirely new disruptive technology throughout the world. And what I would like to do, sorry?
No,
Apologies, Okay, no problem. What I would like to do, and the purpose of today's discussion, is I would like to make a few broad statements, and I would like and love some of the professors, librarians, and individuals in this particular discussion to challenge these points of view, just purely because the debate around this might be more productive and useful, rather than just being a custodian of knowledge. Right, so the first statement that I would like to contest and challenge is, how does generative AI differ from our traditional practices? Would anyone like to outline just the disruptive force that comes from generative AI? And Che, if you might assist with the facilitation. So if I had to phrase my question differently, how does generative AI threaten the work that you currently do? Would anyone like to venture that?
I don't see any hands. Maybe they would raise. Dina, I think you can speak, but I would say that, for instance, unlike the what we are used to, generative AI seems to have more than, so it can create new, it seems to create new information. One thing that it may threaten in our job place, those duties that require answering simple questions, I think could be easily be done by a generative AI. Dina?
I think in terms of the roles of information librarians, particularly when it comes to information literacy, I think it's I wouldn't say that it's threatening the role, but it's creating more opportunities in terms of the fact that we need to find more ways to embed information literacy practices that are more focusing on AI now. Yeah, so I think it's creating more opportunities for us to reinvent the wheel in terms of information literacy. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for both of you. Thank you so much, Dr. Charlie and Dina. Do appreciate that. So let's just unpack this briefly. So rightfully so, but part of the biggest threat that people have is this idea of knowledge production and knowledge generation. Generative AI doesn't actually come up with new ideas at all, but what it does do is it draws links and parallels between already existing information in a way that is useful for researchers. So let me give you an example. There is a technique used in healthcare to assess whether or not a particular drug has an impact on the individual. So if you, for example, swallow a paracetamol tablet, then the argument is your headache cured because of the paracetamol tablet, or because of the water you drank the paracetamol tablet with, or the fact that you're sitting down and you're being studied in a calm and collected environment, right? So the way that you measure the impact of that very specific variable amongst a lot of complicated variables is statistically is a mixed effects model. Now, mixed effects models have been used in healthcare throughout because it's a really good measurement to identify the mixed and the random effects and the fixed effects and its impact on some kind of a desirable outcome. But mixed effects models weren't readily used in education to identify and assess the impact of a particular curriculum on the overall impact of a person's professional learning, as an example. And so what generative AI is really good at is it's really good at seeing similar variables across different fields and saying, if one uses the mixed effects model in education, then you can start studying these things, which is excellent because we can now draw links between different fields. But generative AI doesn't create new ideas. And so that in and of itself causes a dilemma where people have an over-reliance on the knowledge production part of it. And so there are massive limitations to it. So that's the first comment. The second comment, and this is a very important point that Dina raised, and that is the idea that the level of sophistication of basic and advanced work is increasing. So what I mean by that is report writing used to be a very sophisticated skill or identifying trends in a lot of complex data. And now the need for that sophistication has been augmented with the use of generative AI. So now a report can be written really well or not really well, but in a comprehensive and coherent English, which in and of itself was a sophisticated task that took years and years of training to do. Another example is referencing. Referencing, there's a perception that a lot of people have that generative AI can't reference properly, but there are a lot of generative AI tools that can reference really, really well. And so to the extent that if you want all your references to be in a particular referencing style and you quickly want to change it to another, you can simply put your references in a generative AI model that was trained and specialized on referencing, and you can ask it to produce the references that you want with its links, DOIs, etc., in a format that you desire. So the level of sophistication increases. So now I'm going to ask the same question again with this new knowledge, and I'm just going to ask, so what exactly, as information librarians, is being challenged by generative AI? Would anyone like to give it a shot?
I don't see any hands. Nothing on the chat.
Chair, if I may be so bold as to ask you, what is the primary threat or the primary ask that generative AI disrupts in terms of an information librarian?
I think the challenge is that our students might be relying more on the generative AI for information than the actual resources. So meaning that the challenge for information librarian is it's on the training part to say how do you reinforce the correct literature review tendencies or things that they should be doing. And I see on the chat there is the chat that says, I could be wrong, but we are at risk of losing critical thinking skills if we rely too much on AI. And from Michelle quotes, and then Dina agrees.
Thank you very much for that. So this is the crux of the thinking. A lot of people argue that the fact that generative AI can package information in a comprehensive and well-structured manner, also in a way that makes sense, allows for, and this is where Dina did mention there's an opportunity for growth, but contradictory to that, mentions that critical thinking skills are being diminished. This is the challenge that we set, not just among information librarians, but anyone who's concerned with the future of knowledge. So whether that's an academic lecturer, anyone providing training, anyone working in information technology, anyone considered with knowledge production in any way, shape, or form. So whether that's in the form of training, writing a report, or any form of learning. There's a misperception that critical thinking goes away if the information is already neatly packaged. It is true that it does require critical thinking to uniquely package information and summarize information in a particular way. That is true. However, if that skill is automated, like you do with a really good large language model, what is the next step of critical thinking that comes from that? So my question for you, and this is another question just based for the panel, is if you have the ability to generate all your knowledge through a GPT in the sense of packaging, summarizing information neatly, what's the next step of critical thinking that we should be focused on? Can anyone guess? So if you have the best large language model, then you have access to the world's information. You can ask it to summarize anything in existence for you, and it does it really well and accurately. So what's the next step of critical thinking?
On the chat, Tendai says evaluation of information.
Okay, evaluation of information is one.
Sokane MM says, I think the limitation of AI allows, okay, no, that's the other one. Allows the use of critical thinking. Limitation.
And that is true, but the biggest ask here is, if you can summarize all information and you can create a model to evaluate such information. So both the generation of the summarized information and the evaluation of the information is automatic. What is the most important skill, critical thinking skill, that you need? Would anyone like to venture a guess?
David Thomas says it is in the application of that information. I would say, and then Mulatudi says accuracy of the information. I would also say, how do we librarians talk of such strategy when we find information? I would assume that it would also still apply on AI for you to get the best summary, or to get, you should be able to have you should have a way of asking the information. So you need to develop certain skills in terms of your search strategy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just disappeared there. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear.
So that thank you. So that is spot on. Is the most important skill that we have at the moment in terms of critical thinking is the ability to ask the right question. Now, in the context of an information librarian, it has to do with the search strategy. How do you start the question of the information that you're looking for? And that is the most important part that we currently have when it comes to generative AI. The critical thinking skills that we needed to collect and summarize information is being automated. But the ability to ask the right question and the relevant right question is still a fundamental skill that is needed. If we do not develop the ability to ask better research questions, and we do not develop the ability to critically assess the questions we ask, then we are not going to be able to use these types of generative technology to its fullest capacity. And so that is the message that I just wanted to leave you all with, is that information librarians have an incredibly important critical role in the form of knowledge generation. But in order to do it effectively, information librarians need to be able to ask the right questions when it comes to literature search strategies. And that is exactly
Hercules, we lost you. Hello.
Hi there. Hi,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
No, thank you. I was just saying that the most important thing for a research librarian is to be able to ask the optimal and right questions so that the information can be packaged in the most succinct and coherent of ways. And so there's a lot of scope for information to upskill themselves in asking better questions and to be able to teach people how to ask better questions. And that's a huge area that needs to be developed, not just in terms of information librarians, but in all disciplines. One strategy to do this is through prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is the discipline of being able to speak to a computer effectively. Thank you so much for your time, Colin.
Thank you, Hercules. I know that you have an appointment. Are you able to take maybe 1 or 2 questions? I know that you were supposed to leave by 10.
I can do one question, yes.
Okay. Just quickly, we were talking, we are in open access week. So what do you think, what value do you think AI gets from open data? Because now for it to generate, it needs to have data. So now that we are pushing for open data as part of the Open Science Initiative, what do you think, how does open data enrich the AI field? Or even
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's an excellent question. The simple answer to this is it depends on where the data comes from and who created the technologies. And it can and will advance the field if it's done properly.
Okay, thank you very much, Hercules. I'm sorry that there was that mix-up. We're hoping, I hope colleagues have gained a lot. Those of us coming from the conference, we had quite a lot on AI. Maybe now that you are on the floor, maybe we can take reflections because it would not. When I was off the platform just to find out what's happening with Hercules, I understand there was a question on policy. Because when I look at my chat, I can't see it because I probably logged off. Can the person who asked that question ask it again, or somebody who remembers the question just talk to it? Aphelele?
Okay, let me read the question for you. From Tandai, good morning. How far with the National Open Science Policy, which was said to be almost finalized by the end of 2022?
Tandai, the people who were responsible for that, if I'm mistaken, it's ASAF. I think they were, the policy was really not necessarily on open access, but on open science as a whole. And from what I've learned, I think it's supposed to be with their board to approve. I would check on their website what could be but from where I know that all the discussions were held, and it was then said it was at the white paper status. So probably what we can look out for, I will try and check, and I would share it I would share the link to the platform in case I found it, if I'll be able to access it. Any reflection, colleagues, from the discussion with Eculus around AI and open science? So there's a new, oh, just say thank you. Okay, you'll alert me, Apelele, as soon as Professor Power joins. Okay, thank you. I see our audience is very quiet. Maybe whilst we're still waiting for our recording for LIASA in touch, can we all, those of us who've got cameras, if we can switch on so that we can take a group photo? Can we all switch on our cameras? Those who are here who have access quickly so that we can take a group photo. Okay. Okay. Coming. By the way, you all look beautiful. It looks like you wash with milk. Come. Fatima is I'll see the penna only. Okay. Come, ladies, come, gentlemen. Nice to see you, Michelle. Oh, Sitima. Nice office. Come. And all colleagues that would agree, right? Few others. Let's do a print screen. I know. Koropetsi Tebogo, I Lashan.
Morning. I can't see myself on my side. Can you see me? Lerato speaking.
We can see you, Lerato.
Okay, thank you.
And you look bright. You're lower.
Yeah, bulela.
Okay. Can we, Apelele, can you take a picture, please, so that we've got our magazine? I don't know what's happening with this print screen. Let me move.
All good.
Just a minute. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll let's just stay on the chair on the Zoom platform while we wait for. We were hoping to be addressed. Just quickly project back here. Professor Power will be joining us soon. So as soon as she comes as soon as he comes in. I will introduce him. Let me see, there's a new chat. Sorry, my video is not working. Okay, thank you. So one of the things, colleagues, that we are looking at going forward, maybe 2020, 2025 going forward, we are looking at having a sort of a country, because we are the only country. If you look at other countries and even continents, they work as a unit. If you take, for instance, America, it's a Southern American countries. Your Brazil, your Portugal, your Brazil, your where Messi comes from, Argentina. Yeah, all of those countries, we call them America. They work as a unit. They work as a unit. So during this week, for instance, they would be working together as a unit, celebrating this week, and their activities are building. That's why, for instance, United Nations, UNESCO, it's funding them. They fund them to build capacity in building the infrastructure for open science. And if you look at Europe, you look at OpenS and Open Access 2021. So what you would see is that at the end of the day, they also work as a unit. They also work as a unit. Unlike us here in South Africa, for instance, we are not working as a unit. We've got piecemeal. That's why, although as LIASA we try and advertise for everyone, but in reality is that you are working in silos, right? You'll see somebody doing this on Tuesday, somebody doing that on Wednesday, somebody doing this on other days, sometimes even clashes. Like I know University of Mpumalanga, they are having their own thing today. On Friday, there's National Library, there's somebody else. So as a country, we are too disjointed. So what we are trying to do with CHELSA, starting with this, is to make sure that we do this as a country, so that we speak with one voice, so that when we have the movement. So there was maybe an answer quickly to Linda. Linda, yes, Apelele did share the link with Prof, but he had engagement until 10:30, so he'll be joining us at 10:30. So what is important is that instead of working in silos, we are not going to win this battle. I know that Senlik, ASAF, and Department of Higher Education and Science, NRF, CSIR, all those units, at one stage they came together on the issue of what we call national licensing. It started as an issue where they were trying to negotiate on behalf of the country. Currently, you find that institutions, through Sanlik, higher education institution, they negotiate and then they pay subscription. But government was seeing that the money coming from the university is the money that comes from government anyway. Why can't we negotiate as a country so that whoever have access to these resources should be able to? So what we have seen, if you remember last year, we had the chair of Senlik, Ms. Ellen Tice, who is a senior director at Stellenbosch, talking about the initiatives, the country initiatives by Senlik. So what they've done, they've taken what we used to call subscription, and they flip them around so that we use the same money that we used to pay for subscription to have access. Now we're saying no, access should be free. The money that you are paying, you should use it as covering costs for what we call article processing charges, so that you can run the businesses. We know it's not yet a foolproof or a useful thing, but what it means is that everyone in the country now will be able to reach. You will be able to read our research output, whether it's on Science Direct, whether it's on Emerald, whether it's on Chemical Society, whether it's on Oxford Press, whether it's on Cambridge. All those research output by South African universities, one would be able to read them without paying a cent, which was impossible in the past. So although we are moving in a slow pace, but the higher education have made an impact, a huge move. The only thing that is still outstanding, like I'm saying, I'm not sure why here in South Africa people still like to have their own domain, protect their own domain. For instance, ASAF might not want to work with Senlik, or they might have a different view. And then Department of Science and Technology depends on the government, then it depends on the people at home. So there is no unity. And we are a small country. If, like I'm saying, if you look at America, those are different countries in South America. You look at Europe, those are different countries in Europe, but they act as a unit. We are one country, but we cannot even work as a unit. So this initiative now that we're trying now is to address the issue of unity within us, so that when we speak, we should speak with one voice. Because I can tell you now, unless we do that, nobody will take you seriously. And we have made an impact in the country. For instance, higher education has been able to make the impact because they worked as a unity. They came together, higher education and research institutions, they came together under one banner as Senlik and say, here we've got this bargaining power. We are a unit. So, but now it should extend to public libraries, it should extend to national and provincial libraries, it should extend to any other special libraries that we have, so that when we speak with one voice, and we know that we should be able to. So what we'll be hoping for now is that next year, during this time, we should have, if our colleagues come on board correctly, we should have a national initiative. And there's a question also I'm gonna pose to Professor Bauer, because he has also been part of the South African National Site Licensing Initiative when he was still CEO of USAF. And my understanding is that he's still playing a role, and he normally represents the country in the Berlin meetings on open science. So he's quite a relevant person that one can pose a question to. Maybe whilst we are rounding up, maybe colleagues can share from your institution. I've shared with you what I was involved with here at university some 8 years ago, and currently, maybe if I can give you now the current status. Currently, our University One has an open access policy. It's there. Our university now has a research data management policy, which also promotes open data. It's a policy approved by council. We've got in the library an open access publication fund, so we've got money set aside to support. Our aim was to support emerging researchers mainly, but we have found that most of the even accomplished researchers especially in sciences, they tap on that fund because most of their research fund, they use it for lab apparatus and lab accessories. So by the time they want to publish, they don't have money to publish. So they tap on that. And I can tell you now that whilst 15 years ago, one was trying to convince people to publish open science, now it's a question of us supporting them in open science because almost 80% to 90% of our academics are now published in open access publication. So you can see the movement. I remember one of my colleagues who was here is just now went out to another meeting. At one stage around 2017, when we're talking about open data, one of the comment was that it's not going to happen. It's not going to pass the ethics of universities. That was 2016, when we had code data and NEDIC. NEDIC, code data, and NRF. We invited them. We had an open discussion, academics. The feeling at the time was that it's not going to happen. Fast forward to 2020, 2021. Research data management policies approved. And there was a push from the university that we should have it. Although it's supposed to be a responsibility of our research department at the university. But because they understood that the library has the expertise, it was then asked that the library should drive the process of developing the policy and implementing it. So it shows colleagues that if we work and put effort on something, although it might look like it's a difficult task or it's almost impossible, but the reality, the truth is that at the end of the day, people would remember that there is such an issue, and there is a unit within the. So as librarians, what I'm especially now that most of us here are librarians, but not only librarians, all open access activists, I would say even in the case where you think it's a lost case, don't lose hope, because people will remember that so-and-so once mentioned this, and they'll come back to you to ask, to say, we remember you speaking about this, how can you assist us? So those are the realities we find ourselves in. So I've shown you where we were in 2015, come 2023. It's now a question of no longer how to implement open access. Now it's how to we maximize in terms of open access. So the rationale has moved from promoting to adding value or to maximizing open access. So colleagues, I would take comments and questions from participants. You can either switch on your mic, or you can raise your hand, or you can put something on the chat. Hopefully, Prof will be able to join us within the next coming 7 minutes. I hope the people that are behind these screens are still alive. It's quiet. Moses, good morning. We have just taken a short break. Hopefully, Prof will be joining us now in a minute. So we don't be surprised. There's no one talking, that's why there's no sound. Thank you, Moses. Welcome. Aphelele, can you try and send another link to Prof. Bauer? Is saying he's having challenges logging in. Are you able to send it without a login code so that when you click on the link, you can just join immediately?
Okay, let me try to do that.
Okay. Or if you can call him in, is there a possibility of calling him in? technology it's useful, but it can be a challenge. If we're meeting at in UNISA, at least we'll have a warm body in front of us. I've also tried to send him an invite.
Prof. Power has joined, Charlie.
Okay. Welcome, Prof. Yes.
I'm really sorry. There's something wrong with the wireless here.
Thank you, Prof. Well,
I apologize.
Yes. No, it's okay. Prof, this is a joint meeting of CHELSA and LIASA. LIASA is a library association, it's a professional, SAQA registered professional body for librarians.
Sure.
And CHELSA, you know, it's a
of course,
yes. Yeah. So we normally have this joint celebration. We started last year on open science, and we thought you are the better person to talk to us. And I've already introduced you, so we can
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Molepo. I'm just going to try and get my slides up.
Yes, we can see them.
Is that visible to you?
Yes, it's visible, Prof.
Okay, thank you very much, and I apologize very much for being late. Something was wrong with the wireless, and but it's come back on now. Thank you very much. I'd like to first of all thank LIASA and CHELSA for inviting me to this to this meeting and on this very important issue, and I hope that I kind of make a presentation that sort of has some new stuff in it that you would be able to engage with. I've just used this title, which is Opening the Record of Science, and it's really the title of a document that has been put together by the International Science Council, and I'll come to that in a minute. And the idea is really to kind of focus on what it will take to make science, to think about science as a public good. You know, what do we have to do as societies to galvanize science as a public good? And open access is clearly one of these very big issues that we have to deal with if we want to consider science to be a public good. So I'll build on this theme now as we go ahead. First of all, I mean, you know, I think it's very important to think about the national context, because in some regards, although there are very big enterprises going on in the world, I mean, there are papers published every single day now. There are reports that are produced. It's UNESCO, International Science Council, International Association of Universities. There's a tremendous amount of work going on around the world. And of course, there's Open Access 2020, there's Plan S, all these big initiatives. But I think we always have to start with the national context, because we have to engage with those international initiatives. And what that means, in essence, is that we have to go into those discussions having a very good idea of what we want to achieve, if you like. So the first thing I think, I'm very keen on saying is that we've had a growth in postgraduate education over the last 10 or 15 years. And of course, we've had a tremendous growth in research across the higher education sector. Now, one is always kind of, faced with this kind of what used to be the reality, that it's 5 or 6 universities that are really has this big growth in postgraduate education and research. But in more recent years, we've seen this growth happening across the system. And it's very important to keep that context in mind, especially in the context that we have this very unequal access to scholarly journals and information databases, unequal access to resources, other kinds of resources, including financial resources, unequal access to equipment, and so on and so forth. So I think the important thing for us to keep in mind is that the research output and postgraduate output are growing across the system. And that's a very important context to keep in mind. Thirdly, I just wanted to make the point that the Department of Science and Innovation has a large open science project. And this open science project produced a report, and that report has now served to Cabinet. And now the Department of Science and Innovation has been given the go-ahead to produce policies and guidelines for the open science project. The Department of Science and Innovation has created an open science advisory board, which I chair, and it's made a lot of progress, but there's still a lot of work to be done. I think it's important for us to remember that access to journals is increasingly problematic. First of all, we've had this tremendous escalation of costs. And of course, the cost drivers are really to do with the fact that we have tremendous profit making, if you like, by the big publishers. And so we have a really big problem with the industry model, which is really profit driven, very profit driven, and therefore really draws out the the costs higher and higher and higher. And then, of course, for us, the very big problem is the foreign exchange instability. Just a year and a half or 2 years ago, the rand was about 16 to $1. Now it's sitting at almost 20 to $1. It's now 19 to $1. And of course, we just have to remind ourselves that in the 1970s, 1980s, that the exchange rate was more like 2 to 1 or something like that. So there's been this exponential increase in the cost of journals because of the foreign exchange instability. Of course, the instability also leads to something else. It's just the fact that we can't plan that well. And so that's a very big problem. The industry model is we have to take on. I mean, we've got no option but to fight the industry model, and it's a global fight. It's not just a fight that South Africa has to wage. But we pay as a public, as public universities, we pay 4 times, for the product that these publishing houses produce. So first of all, we pay for the research mainly through the tax base. The second thing we do is we pay for peer review. Then we pay for reading, and then of course we also pay publishing charges. So there are 4 different avenues of funding that go towards that industry model. And basically, we hand over the publications to the industry, and then the copyright and so on belongs to the industry. So there's a really big problem with that industry model, and we have to challenge it. And of course, as I'm saying, this is not just a South Africa battle; it's a global battle. By the way, in 2018, 2019, the vice chancellors came to a position, that we would adopt a sectoral approach to this journal acquisition. And what that meant was that we would really work hard at building a national approach, that we would really aggregate our resources, strengthen the arm of whoever's doing the negotiations for us. It's SADLIC usually, that we would strengthen its arm to get us the best deals and so on, and then that we would then move ahead, if you like, with addressing the deep inequalities and so on. And then, of course, there's the discussions with cohort. That's the science councils. They were on board with this. And then there was the open access roadmap, which we had put together between the NRF and USAF, and that roadmap hasn't made any tracks yet. We have to get back to that at some point. I don't know what the exact figure is now, but around about 2018 or 2019, our subscription cost in South Africa was something like 600 million rand a year. And then on top of that, of course, we were paying article processing charges. So you can imagine, just what the cost of this is to the university system. So what are the national options, right, that are open to us? If we stay with the kind of current models, if you like, the first one is that we continue to allow SADLIC to engage in negotiations. And by the way, SADLIC has made very big savings for us, and I think the national license approach was one that we tried, with USAF, where we kind of really tried to understand whether we could adopt a national approach to getting a national license. Many countries did that, Brazil, Pakistan, various other countries had these national licenses. So ASAF did a very big study on this, with funding, I think, from DSI, if I'm not mistaken, or I think it might have been DHET. And that study sort of indicated, in fact, that this would be much more expensive for us than the current model that we have. Of course, what it would have addressed was the inequality of access. So there would have been something to gain from that. But actually, we didn't follow that route because of the cost implications. And then, of course, we began to engage with Open Access 2020 in terms of transformative agreements, where we kind of decided that we would move from a pay-to-read to a pay-to-publish model to get access to open access, if you like, or get open access to our journals, and of course, I think what SADLIC is finding, and it would be very good if SADLIC gave a presentation on this, but what they found, I think, is that it's not very easy to negotiate these with the publishing houses, even though we have made some progress, which is very good. The problem with this, of course, is that it doesn't change the model all that much. In fact, all it does really is kind of change the kind of idea that we pay to read to pay to publish, but actually we still, those, what you call them, the big publishing houses have basically just shifted gear, if you like, and they've changed their model, but actually they're still generating those huge amounts of profits and so on. So we have a real, so we have to really, while the transformative agreements will give us some greater access, if you like, it's not the ideal model, and we have to move beyond it. I mean, there's no question about it. We have to move beyond it. And then there are these, two other very important, developments. The one are the institutional repositories, and then preprint databases. And by the way, preprint databases aren't new at all. In the physics world, there's Archive, which is a preprint database. But it really is the first port of call now for physicists around the world. when you're searching for something, you go to archive. It's by far, and we don't seem to have that kind of passion in South Africa for preprints yet. And so preprints are already publications, if you like, something that's not yet peer reviewed and so on, but which can go onto a database and which can then be served, if you like, as helping us to serve as helping us to kind of make progress with access. We have to kind of try and address some very big issues with these repositories, both the institutional repositories and the preprint databases. The first is that we have to design for interoperability. And that means basically they have to be searchable around the world. Otherwise, they just, they don't kind of really serve the purpose that they could serve. So we have to design them for interoperability. And by the way, this is not just something that has to be done at the institutional level. It also has to be done at the global level, that we have the systems that kind of really provide for the access to all of these institutional repositories. The second is that we have to automate them automatically, that we shouldn't ask, academics, please will you upload your preprints, or please would you upload your papers that are open access. So we have to automate them, or we have to automate the population of them. The third is that we have to create a platform for reviews. Now that's an interesting and challenging thing, and it requires a lot of intellectual work, actually. But, what would peer reviews look like if we moved into this kind of terrain? And by the way, this is a very big issue with regard to the future of scholarly publishing. And there's a lot of work going on in this area. And then finally, we have to enhance the use of digital data technologies. Our current publishing model is still kind of, although it uses technologies, it really uses technologies on a 19th century kind of model, if you like. And we have to move beyond that, it seems to me. For some reason now, I can't get this to move forward. Just give me one moment, please. Okay. So what's the global context, right? We have lots and lots of lessons from COVID-19, and we have to pick up those lessons. And, one of them, of course, is the use of preprints. Now, by the way, we also learned from COVID-19 that using preprints is not by definition, by itself, a really good idea. Like, we have to think quite hard about what we learned from COVID-19. The second is the advancement of knowledge. The advancement of knowledge is essential. Is essential to all modern societies. Fundamental knowledge, applications to address challenges, and so on. But that knowledge has to be made available to broad kind of sections of the population, to all parts of the population. The third is that many of the grand challenges that we face are both local and global in scale. And that we have to really think about the importance of scholarly publishing in that regard, that actually we have to make sure that research that's published about our local context is placed on the global, is available globally, and vice versa. The fourth one is the geopolitical tensions that are causing fracturing of the global science system. So, we see that every day, with now, of course, the war in Palestine, Israel, between Palestine and Israel. Well, I shouldn't say the war between Palestine and Israel. You can't think of that as a war. It's really the war of Israel on Palestine. That is a geopolitical tension. And that really kind of like the Ukraine war and so on, is really leading to a fracturing of the world. We are seeing a breakdown of globalization, basically. And that has enormous consequences for the future of science. Then we've got this very distorted geopolitics of knowledge. So much of the knowledge is still kind of centered on North America and Europe. Of course, China and India are now growing in terms of their outputs. So we are seeing a shifting in that. The question is, how do we relate to that as South Africa, as Africa, and so on? And what are the implications of that for the publishing regimes? And then finally, open science has captured the imagination of many governments, and that's something that we can't ignore. We have to take that forward. Okay, for some reason, I'm having difficulty with forwarding these. Okay, okay, so I don't want to spend too much of time on this. In fact, I'm going to skip this one because I don't want to get caught with time. The International Science Council has established a sort of a steering group on open access, and it's what I mentioned earlier, opening the record of science. That's what it's called. I'm actually a member of that steering committee, and that committee has, after a lot of work, a lot of consultation, discussions, and so on, come up with 8 principles, and those 8 principles were adopted by 90% of the membership of the International Science Council at its 2021 General Assembly. And I'm going to just go through those very quickly because I know I'm going to run short of time. I think the only thing I'd like to mention here is that the International Science Council is an organization of 200 science bodies from across the world. So it's very much a representative body of the scientific community. Okay, so principle 1 just says that we have to have rapid and global circulation of ideas, and that is central to the scientific project, and we have to have open access to the record of science. And there's other detail there which I'm not going to go to. So that's something, the first principle. Second one is that scientific publications should have the default position of carrying open licenses. So it's stating upfront that open licenses should be the norm for scientific publications because science is a public good. So it should be open access. The third is that we must have rigorous, timely, and ongoing peer review, and that this has to be done to maintain the public record of science. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I think we have to do a lot of work to try and understand how to improve the peer review system. And there might well be the need for us to take interesting new approaches to addressing this peer review. Oh, sorry. Fourth one is the data and observations on which a public truth claim is based must be accessible for review. So what this means is that if there's data that is used to get to a scientific conclusion, then that data must be available for scrutiny. Okay. Principle 5 is that the record of science should be maintained in such a way that it's open access by future generations. That we have to be careful that we don't create systems that collapse and that then we have a break in the records and so on. And librarians know that. It's something that you do very well. So we have to maintain the record for future generations. Principle 6 is that we have to have that the modes of publication and bibliodiversities in different disciplines and regions need to be adapted to relevant needs. So what that means basically is that we have to be sensitive to the fact that the world is not all the same, that there are different challenges in different parts of the world, and that we have to somehow take on this idea that we have to be sensitive to the differences around the world. Principle 7 is that publication systems should be designed to continually adapt to new opportunities for beneficial change. And basically that's saying that as technologies change, the publication system should be changing. As we kind of have different approaches to the scientific method, for example, then we should have kind of new approaches to the publication system. And finally, that the governance of the process of dissemination of scientific knowledge should be accountable to the scientific community. So this is absolutely critical, that we have to place the governance of scholarly publishing back in the hand of the scientific community, that it shouldn't be handed over to corporate organizations. So if we look at our current system, and I don't have to explain this, if we look at the current system, it just does not meet the requirements of these principles. It is, and secondly, what are the main challenges that rise from the for-profit sector? Excessive prices, the use of high impact factors as a proxy for quality, the publish and perish culture of universities, that's a very big issue. The impact on publishing ethics, we know about predatory publishing, we know about how people slice and dice their papers, and so on and so forth. And of course, one of the big challenges we have is that, and this really came from our colleagues in South America, in Latin America, and they said, look, for example, with the transformative agreements, what you still have is a circulation of money in the global north. So, Plan S has this very big project to move us towards transformative agreements. Well, the majority of countries in the global south can't afford those transformative agreements. So, it retains the circulation of resources in the global north, if you like. And I think that, perhaps the most important point of all is that the scientific community and those that fund science, and primarily governments through taxation, play very little role, if any, in the governance of the publishing enterprise. So what are the ideal outcomes? They have to satisfy 5 conditions. The funding of publishing should be internationally coordinated, and it has to take into account local conditions. Now, if South Africa is publishing 1% of the research output of the global world, that's what we should be responsible for, something like that. We should be really thinking quite hard about how to develop a global approach to the funding of publishing. Secondly, that the standards for publication should incorporate these 8 principles that I've just mentioned. Thirdly, that universities and science institutions more generally should agree only to use articles published in ways that adhere to these standards. So in other words, when we measure staff performance, or when we measure promotion criteria, and so we should be clear that we should be taking into account these 8 principles in terms of how. So this is to change institutional culture, right, which is such a big issue. The fourth thing is that a highly functional record of the complete output of science articles, as characterized above, should be available, making the record of science freely available to all. And then, and this is very important, we must have a proper segregation of functions of publishing from the data and data analytics of publishing. So at the moment, the companies that do the publishing are also responsible for the data and data analytics. And so, they generate kind of bad cultures and so on because of this, having the responsibility, if you like, for both of these functions. Oops, sorry. So what should we be doing as South Africa, right? First of all, we have to build a national continental approach to open access. And we should be using the Africa Open Science Platform, which is based on the NRF, but it has a kind of a continental approach, if you like, a continental mandate. So we have to build a national and continental approach. We have to have a very good sense of what we want to achieve. Secondly, that we must move towards an aggregation of resources. So in other words, to say to our universities, science councils, governments, let's put our resources together so that we can negotiate better, that we can build better approaches, and so on. Thirdly, that we should understand what we take into the global debate and what the modality of our participation will be in those global forums. We shouldn't leave it to the global north to decide how that global model is going to play out. We have to engage that global model. Fourthly, that we have to begin a process of culture change in our institutions. There is much evidence now that high impact factors are not reliable as a proxy for quality. We have to begin to change the mindset. We have to begin to say to ourselves, what are we actually trying to do at our institutions in terms of research and research outputs? And then fifthly, we have to understand the challenges of building an open science platform and how open access fits into that. And as I mentioned, we already have made significant progress in that direction, although universities are not yet that involved in these discussions. With that, let me say thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that that was useful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you. I see some clapping of hands. I think one of the colleagues asked a question before you joined, and I said you were going to answer it, and you did answer it. He was asking about the policy. Where is the open access, open science policy? Because it was promised to be there so I think you did touch on, but you can add. I think the question was, yeah. Can you read it, Apelele? The question from Tendai.
Okay, let me go back from.
So yeah, I think to be honest, it's very much in the hands of DSI now, because we did whatever work we had to do. That policy went, those policy recommendations went to cabinet. Cabinet has now approved that. Basically, cabinet has said to DSI that it now needs to produce policies and guidelines. So that it's now in the hands of DSI. I'm sure they'll call on us. They'll call on the universities to get involved. But at the moment, that's where it is.
Yeah. Maybe another question, Prof, is that if you look at
the question was how far with the national.
Yeah, I think he has answered that. So Prof, the question, the other thing is that if you look at South America, you've got America, you look at Europe, you've got planners. Why are we in South Africa taking that long to? I know that there was that initiative in terms of national site licensing, but I don't see us having a formal structure like those countries. Anyway, a small country. We should be looking at, like we are saying in those 4 recommendations of the IOS program. What is delaying us having that one national approach and one continental approach?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good question. And I think partly it's got to do with the fact that we bought into the dominant publishing, scholarly publishing industry kind of model, So, we had the resources to pay, well, no, I shouldn't say we. Some institutions, a few institutions had the resources to pay for access to journals. And so we didn't fight it in the way the Latin Americans are fighting it. And I think that now the time has changed. I mean, now we really have to take this on, and in particular because government now has as a policy, it's writing up a policy on open science, and open access is fundamental to that. So that's the one issue. The second issue is that our government has been completely agnostic about this. It has done nothing really to support open access in any serious way. That's not the same in Brazil. It wasn't the same in Argentina and so. There was a very a big role played by government in addressing open access. So,
yeah, I maybe I can take an advantage that I see Nora is on the platform. You use the 2016-17 estimation. Nora, by the way, how much are we currently spending? It's close to $1 billion, if it's not $1 billion. I'm just taking advantage that I see you on the platform.
Charlie, I'd only know for what people are subscribing to through SANLEX. So yeah, it's many millions. I'd have to look at my figures to see, but it's a huge amount of money, and 98% of our subscriptions are paid in foreign currency, which is a big problem for us.
So, thank you, Nora. You happen to be my previous boss, for those who don't know. Any question for Prof, colleagues? And I can tell you, you can ask anything, whether it's international or South African in terms of open access. Prof would answer the question.
That is.
Any question going once? Going twice? Thank you very much, Prof. Maybe I'll take this opportunity to give it to Linda, our PRO, just to do a vote of thanks. Thank you very much, colleagues, for your patience, especially that we had those challenges in the earlier, and I see most of you have stayed on. Thank you very much for your patience, and then I'll hand over to Linda.
Good morning, colleagues. Thank you, Charlie, for organizing this. You mentioned earlier that it is something that is on the pipeline that you would like to see us having this, let me not say international, rather South African coordinating one open access week, which would be of benefit. But I want to say thank you to Professor Bauer for enlightening us on the importance of making the governance of scientific community belong to the scientific community rather than the people who are selling it. You gave us an overview of how do we build this national approach that Charlie has a vision for. And I also want to thank you, our earlier speaker, Comric. I think one of the things that he highlighted was the importance of the information librarian within this AI community. That ability to ask the right questions, it's very important. Thank you, colleagues, for attending. We hope to see all of you again in the next Open Access Week next year. And thank you, Apelele, for organizing this day. And thank you to you, Charlie, for organizing the day. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Prof. Prof, I think I'll call upon you. The idea is that, like I was saying, this silo approach, it's not working. And then because now we are at different levels, and we also perpetuate inequalities in terms of the information. So what we are hoping, we started now with CENLIC, CHELSA, and LIASA. We hope going forward, it should be a national approach, so that we have one national, even if it's driven by Department of Science and Technology and Innovation, so be it, so that we work as a country. And I would be touching on you just to explore how can we take this process forward, because come 2024, we shouldn't be doing this. We should have one country event where we are going to promote open science. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, colleagues. Enjoy.